Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Library Talk and everything else. I'm your host, DJ JC. We're starting a little bit late, but we're here and we're excited to be here. I am excited to have a show this morning because I have a friend of mine, Mr. Rocky Rocha, in the studio this morning. Good morning, Rocky.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good to be here. I'm excited about this, too.
Thank you so much for being here, Rocky. You are living the dream because you are a retired educator, and I want to talk a little bit more about that.
All right.
But before we do that, if you're just joining us for the first time, thank you so very much for being here. We really appreciate you finding the show, listening to the show, and hopefully you like the content and you'll tell others about the show that we're doing. If you're a longtime listener, thank you so much also for your support in making this show and every other show here at UTRGV such a wonderful success. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your Thursday morning. Rocky, so I was thinking about something. I was thinking about the fact that I've had this show for a year, and one of my interests is Star Wars, and you had an opportunity to go by my office and you saw that it was decked out and pretty much everything Star Wars. And so Star Wars and books. As a librarian, I love reading, but through all the first season, I never really discussed books or Star Wars. So now I think I was waiting for the right guest, and you're the one that I was waiting for. So thank you so much again, Rocky. Thank you so much to all of you for listening. We're going to go to a music break. Again, you're listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Good morning again, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Library Talk and everything else. If you're just joining us after the music break, you were listening to AC/DC's Thunderstruck. Such a powerful song and a wonderful segue into what we're going to talk about today, which is the excitement that Rocky and I, my guest today, have on Star Wars. I don't know if there's any connection with Thunder, but anyway, well, maybe in one of the novels. But thank you so very much, everybody. We really appreciate you being here and allowing us, as I mentioned earlier, to be part of your Thursday mornings. If you're just joining us for the first time, this is a research-based show in which we look at a research question and then using the UTRGV's library resources, plug, we discern that question, and any information that I provide you, any data or anything like that has been researched to make sure that you are receiving credible and reliable information. So we're going to be looking at a research question in a bit, but I want to ask my guest to introduce himself, and I have a couple of questions for him. But we are going to talk about Star Wars today, as I mentioned before the break, and I'm really excited about this because Rocky and I have gone to lunch, and we have spent about 3 hours just talking about various topics, right, Rocky?
Oh, yeah.
And so he's going to come back to talk about something else later on. I want to have him as a guest. But Rocky, thank you so much again. As I mentioned before the break, you are living the dream as a retired educator. So please introduce yourself, who you are, how we know each other, and I'll ask you a question about Star Wars after that.
All right. Like you just heard, my name's Rocky. Like you just mentioned, I just retired back in May after 28 years teaching physical education, most of it at Still Middle School. So anybody who's listening from there,
all right.
And I'd like to give a shout out to my family peeps.
All right, there you
and
go.
My friend peeps. Hopefully they're listening in here now, or maybe later.
Yes, and the later, yes.
Couple more, if I may. To the guys in my fantasy football leagues, the Galactic Republic Football League and the Warrior Football League. They said, please make a mention here. So there you go. Hope you guys are listening somehow, some way.
And, we've been friends for a while, Rock, but one of the things that we do not agree on are our football teams. You're a big Cowboys fan, and I'm a big New Orleans Saints fan. So, but we're still friends. It's okay.
Yeah, but the way our teams are playing, we're sharing each other's team
exactly.
Right now.
We really are. We really are. But I wanted to ask you what your earliest memory was and is of Star Wars, and then I'll share mine. But what do you remember of Star Wars?
Well, I consider myself an OG fan. 'Cause I was there when it was first out. I was 6 years old. As I was thinking about it, I don't have a particular memory of being in the theater or watching it. I just remember, I know I was watching it, and I want to say it was at the Majestic downtown. I remember being in line outside the corner from the Majestic in line for a movie. So I want to say it's Star Wars. Unfortunately, I don't remember watching it for the first time. I'm like, come on, what happened?
You don't remember that
My parents
moment.
said we did go. I do remember standing in line for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which was at the North Park Plaza Theater.
Okay, yes, I remember that.
That's my earliest memory with Star Wars.
Okay, so why do you have such an interest now in Star Wars?
Well, I've always been just like everybody else when it first came out. Everybody else of a certain age, it was just one of those movies that you saw it there and you're like, Oh, with the Star Destroyer coming from above
Yes.
you. When did that happen? When did that happen? The effects, the storylines. It was just a good, fast-paced movie. I mean, even to this day, if it comes out on TV, I'm watching it. But I gotta say, if with the commercials, I'll switch over to Disney Plus. So I don't know if I
It's
can
a
say
lot
that.
easier. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
lot
because
easier.
I can watch
It's a
it
lot
without the
easier.
commercials,
It's a
and I'll
lot
finish
easier.
it before it finishes on the broadcast TV.
Usually you have Star Wars marathons like on New Year's Day or Christmas Day and things like that, right?
Sometimes,
Yes,
but
I've
I'll watch
seen
like
that.
one movie a day.
Okay, you
'Cause,
watch
the
one
movies
movie.
are like two to 2.5 hours long. So,
Yes.
but yeah, every now and then I'll just put in a movie.
That's so great, and it's this Star Wars just transcends. I mean, it's an international phenomenon. It is something that
It,
we
it
can
has
all get
blown
behind.
up,
It
especially
has,
in the '90s when the novel started coming
and
out,
we're
and
going to talk
then
about
yeah, and
that.
then George Lucas brought back
Yes.
the prequels, and bam, it just came out of nowhere because there was nothing in the '80s. After Return of the Jedi, it kind of died out a
And we're
bit.
going to talk about that.
Yeah.
So, today's research question is: how have the narrative structures and thematic focuses of the Star Wars franchise and its novels changed since Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm in 2012? And I talked about this earlier as I mentioned that you and I have gone to dinner and to lunch
Mhm.
and we have extensive conversations of various topics. But one of the things that we have spoken about are the novels. And so, I want to talk a little bit about the novels because you have been reading the novels for a long time. And I'm going to ask you about some of these novels. And you have told me that you've seen the shift since the acquisition
Mhm.
of Disney. Some things that were canon are no longer canon, and we'll talk about that. But I want to talk a little bit about my experience with Star Wars. It came out in 1977, and I was about a year and a half, so it was a little too young. But I remember, Rocky, Empire Strikes Back coming out in 1980.
Yep.
And I remember them bringing Star Wars back into the theaters because they were going to bring
It was the
Empire Strikes Back. So it
re-releases.
was a
They did that
re-release
several
so that
times. Yeah.
the audience could get back into. I mean, because again,
That I remember.
there was a gap from 77 to 80 where you had very few things dealing with Star Wars. Maybe you
Yeah.
had the infamous Star Wars holiday
The holiday
special. You had that.
We're not going to talk about
We
that.
won't talk about that one now. But you have those things, but there was this gap. So my understanding is from the research that I've conducted is Empire's coming out and they re-release Star Wars so that people can get it back
Mhm.
into their minds of what happened in the original one, the first one. And I know number wise it's 4, 5, 6, and then the
Mhm.
prequels and so forth.
Mhm.
But I remember that, and I remember my father taking me to see Star Wars. I remember seeing Star Wars at the theater. I'm 5 years old now at this point, and I, like you, like other kids our age, were blown away by the effects, by the story, by the characters. And I don't know about you, Rock. I know you and I have talked about this, and I want to kind of get this straight. I was Han Solo. That was my character. I wanted to be Han Solo.
All right. Most people envision themselves as Luke Skywalker because he's the hero, the protagonist of the story. What the story revolves around, with one or the other. Do you want to be the hero or you want to be the scoundrel?
I
You
wanted
want
to
be the
I
scoundrel.
wanted to be Han Solo. So I remember watching Star Wars again in the re-release in 1980, and then watching Empire Strikes Back. My father taking me, and my father's not a science fiction fan, but
Mhm.
he knew that I got so caught up in this. So fast forward to 1983, Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
My father challenged me. He said, "If you pass all your classes, your grades are great. I will take you in the summer to go
Yeah,
see
yeah.
Return of the Jedi."
Yeah.
And again, I think I was a good student, so I ended up going to see Return of the Jedi. But yes, the original Star Wars, I was too young to see it. I saw it in a re-release, then I saw Empire Strikes Back, and then Return of the Jedi. And you mentioned how so many people our age, but you know, I had a librarian that I worked with, who he worked at a movie theater back in Wichita, Kansas, and he worked at a movie theater when Star Wars the original came out in 1977. Did not like it,
Mhm.
never
Yeah.
saw it, and he was never into the whole Star Wars uh,
As
franchise.
much as there are people that are fans of it, there's quite a few people that are out there that it's not for them, and I get it. I get it. It doesn't appeal to everybody.
You and I were talking off mic right now about the new trailer for the new movie, and there are people already kind of criticizing things about
I
that.
think right now, this is my opinion, of course. The Star Wars fandom is kind of toxic.
I've never heard them described as toxic. But
Yeah,
okay.
nothing they're gonna do. Nothing they're gonna do is ever gonna be perfect. So it's kind of like people are gonna find things to criticize.
Yes.
I guess is the
Yes.
word I'm looking for. And I tell people it's a movie. It's entertainment. We're shutting our brains off for 2 hours
Yes.
to go be entertained. Don't
Yes.
forget it's not real life. But that's for a lot of things. That's for a lot of things too.
We do have Disney Plus, and we have all these different streaming services that now, just by selecting it, we can watch the entire series.
Hmm.
Which are 9 movies in the original series.
Hmm.
It started with episode 4, 5, 6, and then in 1997 was it that they brought the special editions,
Yeah.
and so they bring those back. And I want to ask you what you think about the special editions.
Well, it's been well documented that the special editions are the movies that George Lucas wanted to make originally but couldn't because of technology available at the time. I liked it. I liked the additions to it. Not everything,
Okay.
but for most of the stuff, like in A New Hope, a lot of the stuff that they added, I liked it.
Okay.
I know at first with the Jabba the Hutt scene,
Yes.
it doesn't really add anything to the movie.
No.
I remember reading about it in the comics and stuff like that. I had no issues with it. Let me jump ahead to the Return of the Jedi. I didn't really like the musical number.
I think I knew where you were going with that.
It's like,
One,
what?
because
It
you and I have
doesn't
talked
make
about
any
it.
sense. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. But
It doesn't.
for the most part, I enjoyed it. I
Okay.
barely remember what the original theatrical release is like. I don't even think my kids have seen the original. Theatrical release.
Yes.
Maybe they have. I don't know. But to them, they have the special editions and the prequels.
This is a very deep cut, Rocky. I know this, but the argument about Han Solo and Greedo, and that's I know you're laughing.
That particular scene has been changed
That's
so
so
many
it's-
times
yes.
with each edition release of the DVDs and on Disney Plus and stuff like that. It's like it didn't even matter who shot first.
Well, I went to Disneyland in
You have
2019,
a Han Solo
and I
shot
had
first.
I had a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Han shot first,
Yeah.
and the Disney new Star Wars area had just opened up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to show this shirt off. I am going to show this off. And I think 2 people commented, hey, nice shirt.
Yeah, there you go.
Again, because there's this whole generation that hasn't seen the original. And I don't even think the original cuts exist.
For George Lucas, no.
Okay.
He pretty much said that, and this is well documented, of course, that the originals, that's not the movie he wanted to make. So it's the special edition, whatever's out now, is the actual official movie release.
And that's canon.
Yes.
And so anything now that is coming out is canon. And we're going to talk about that as we move into the novels. But I remember that there was this gap where Star Wars was just still there, but it really wasn't
Yeah.
anything. And I think you mentioned the 80s. Now, I do have to mention a made-for-TV movie about the Ewoks. Do you remember that one?
I think there were 2 of them.
There were 2 of
There were
them.
2 of them.
There were 2. There were 2, and those were the 80s.
Well, they were on TV.
I remember that.
I think I started watching. I didn't see both of them. I think I started watching them, and I thought I'm a teenager, of course, already.
Yes.
I think in high school, and I'm watching this, and I'm like, "What is this?" To me, it had no connection to the
No
overall
connection.
Star Wars thing,
No.
and it was never implied that there were humans living on Endor where
Yeah,
the Ewoks
exactly.
were. So
And also there was a cartoon, Droids. I remember
that one I
Droids
haven't
as
seen.
well.
I
I remember
I don't
Droids.
recall ever seeing it.
But that was the extent to Star Wars. I remember
Pretty
after
much.
'83, the toys were still popular. They were
They
still
were
coming
for
out
a
with,
while, and then I think I want to say it was Mattel had the license, and then since nothing was coming out, I think they kind of let it.
just kind of expire.
Yeah, they
yes.
didn't renew it. So, yeah, I remember going to like Montgomery Wards.
Yes, oh my
Remember
goodness, that's
Ardan?
a-
Anybody
that's-
in Brownsville remember Ardan?
I was talking to my family about Ardan and some friends about Ardan. They don't remember Ardan's.
Yeah, I
It
remember.
was right there off of,
Boca
at least in
Chica,
Brownsville.
behind the first Big Daddy's, which was a Dairy Queen.
And again, this conversation is very Brownsville centric. So if you are listening
Yeah.
from Edinburgh, I'm sure you had some of these stores that we're talking about. But
I mentioned Ardan because they had a very good toy section, like Montgomery Ward. And that's where we get Montgomery Ward at Amigoland Mall, which is now the UTB campus.
yeah, it is- it
UTRGB
is-
campus.
UTB,
sorry.
UTB, yes,
Sorry about that.
yes.
Well, when I came here, it was UTB.
Ah, there you go. Okay.
So, yeah, I remember going to Montgomery. I remember buying some Star Wars figures at Montgomery Wars because they had a very good toy section, and as did Ardan.
I remember Ardan's as well. Yes. Not too many people remember about our dance.
You got to be
but
of
I
a
remember
certain
that.
age.
Exactly,
You
to
know?
remember our dance. And so I remember there was this gap where, Star Wars was just there still. And maybe occasionally I'd go to a bookstore and I'd see a copy of a Star Wars novel or something like that, right? And they would have something like that. But it was not really, I think we had lost interest in it and
It kind of waned.
waned a little
Yeah,
bit.
because there was
I
nothing
like
to do.
that.
There was really there were. I know that there were some Marvel had some comics which were
Yes,
way out there.
really,
I've been reading them online and I'm looking at this like, what is this? The
really.
characterization is totally different. It wasn't official canon, and there was a role playing game. There
Oh,
were some role
okay.
playing games that were out, which
Okay.
I didn't get into at the
Yes.
time. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much there was.
And so now, Rocky, let's talk about the shift into the novels because I can remember, I can remember in high school, my senior year of high school, my English teacher had received a donation of books. And in that stack of books was actually Heir to the Empire.
Heir to the
And
Empire.
Heir to the Empire was published in 1991,
91.
and she had this book there, and I was like, "Oh, Star Wars, okay." Never read it, but she had it as part of this donation of books that she had received, and it never moved. It was just kind of collecting dust, I
Mhm.
guess, because Star Wars. And this is 1994 that I'm a senior in high school, and Heir to the Empire came out in
Oh, okay, okay.
1991. I think it's by Timothy Zahn, if I'm
Timothy Zahn,
yes, which is a fantastic science fiction writer.
He writes good stories.
And so this one's there on the, and I was like, oh, I read the back of the book. I think it was part of a trilogy, wasn't
Yes,
that?
it was the first part of a new trilogy
The
coming out.
Thrawn,
Yeah,
Thrawn series, right?
it's now known as the Thrawn trilogy.
Okay, but it was there, right? Okay, so I graduated from high school, and have you read that one, by the way?
Several times.
Oh yes,
The whole trilogy several
whole
times.
trilogy.
Yeah.
and is it really good? Because people say that it's a really good
That
addition.
trilogy is top notch. Timothy Zahn is an awesome author. He's written several books within the Star Wars universe. All of them are interconnected. The character development that he has and the characters he came up with were fantastic. I could not put the book down. I wanted to keep on reading it all the way through. It hooked me.
And
when,
this
when,
is
when I first bought
this,
it.
the
This
series,
is the first time.
The first
This
time.
is the first time I'm reading Heir to the Empire. I had no idea it was coming out. If I can relate the stories.
By all means, yes, that's what we're
Sunrise
here
Mall,
for.
Walden Books.
Walden
where-
Books. Oh my
where
goodness!
This is
if
the
you
old Sunrise Mall before the remodel, where the Sears on the Sears side.
yes,
I'm just walking by. I had before I had found that when I had graduated, I started reading Star Trek books because that's what
Star
Star
Trek,
Trek was
okay.
my other interest. And I was, there were novels there, numbered novels and standoffs and things like that. And I see a display there. It looks like Star Wars. I see the cover. This guy with a white beard. And a robe with his hands up in the air, and it's like, is that Obi-Wan? Obi-Wan Kenobi? I picked it up, bought it, I read it. I think I read it in less than a week.
really.
The character development, the characters he came up with, Grand Admiral Thrawn, holy moly!
And now these are part of canon now, right? They're part of the universe.
The Star Wars universe,
Yes.
the Legends, or the now canon.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what we're going to talk about
Okay.
a little bit. After the
All
music
right.
break, we're going to talk about that. But he is a main character within
He's
the
been
Star
brought
Wars.
into what's now considered the Star Wars canon, and now
Okay.
Grand Admiral Thrawn and some other characters have as well.
Within that series.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 3 books to that series.
Yeah.
And so, again, my teacher only had book 1.
Yeah.
And again, Star Wars, I kind of lost some interest in it, and it wasn't my thing for a while. Never did Star Trek. I was never into the
Yeah.
Star Trek series. And so I graduated from high school, I start college, and one day, this guy that I have for a class, he is at the library, and he's reading a Star Wars novel, and I knew him from class. I didn't know him very well, but I went up to him and I go, "What are you reading?" And he's like, "I'm reading Shadows of the Empire."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Shadows of the Empire, and that was
Another
published in
one, yeah.
1996. So
Yeah.
I think I read it probably in 97, 98. And so Shadows of the Empire, he's like, it's a really good book. I can lend you my copy. So after he finished, he lent me his copy. And I was just blown away with that novel. It is such a wonderful novel, and that it got me back into the series.
Yeah.
Now, Shadows of the Empire takes place between
It's right after Empire.
Empire
Right,
and-
right after Empire.
and before Return of the Jedi.
Fills in that year in the Star Wars timeline.
Yes.
There's a year between Empire and Return of the Jedi, and Shadows of the Empire fills in that year. It's the first rescue of Han Solo.
Yes, and it's an amazing book. If you haven't read it, it is, I mean, almost going on 30 years old, right? But it is a great book. They introduce some new characters, And so as I was starting to do the research for this episode today, I read that Shadows of the Empire kind of rejuvenated the idea of Star Wars back into the series because it's 1996 with the re-releases of the special editions came out in 97. I don't know how true that is, but I know there's a video game also that came out, Shadows of the Empire as well.
Shadows of the Empire was a multimedia release. The novel, the video game, I think some sort of music was come out. Comic books were coming out. It was the first of its kind.
Yeah, and
It was amazing actually.
it was a really
it
great book. Again,
yeah.
if you haven't read Shadows of the Empire and you're really into Star Wars, highly recommend Shadows of the Empire. So that was that book. And then let's see, I'm trying to fast forward here. I'm in a history class now, and I meet this guy, and his name is Marcos, and he is really into Star Wars also. And one day we just started talking about Star Wars, and he asks me, "Have you ever read the Han Solo trilogy?" And I go, "No, I haven't." And that's all he asked me. What have you ever read the Han Solo trilogy? Well, one day he shows up to class with the Walden Books bag,
Yeah.
and he bought me the entire trilogy.
Yeah.
He just showed up one day and he gave me the entire brand new
Yeah.
in bag from Walden Books. He had given me
Alright.
the Han Solo trilogy. That is a wonderful series. Also, if
I
you
like that
haven't
too. I like that you
read
got
that
to
one,
see Han
that's a really
Solo
good
as
one.
a kid.
Yes.
You know, and his
And-
name was actually Solo. It wasn't given to him.
as in one of the movies may imply,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, yes, that's another wonderful book, or series rather. And then I really started reading Star Wars novels at that
Mm-hmm.
point. I can't say it was the only thing I was reading, but every once in a while I'd go to the bookstore and I'd see, oh, a new Star Wars novel, and I'd pick it up. I Jedi,
Oh.
the Truce at Bakura, and all these
Oh, man,
different
yeah,
novels.
Those were good novels. I Jedi was it's the only novel I know that was written in the third person.
Oh,
Or,
okay.
no, first
First
person.
person,
From the point of view of one of the characters.
Okay.
A new character actually.
Yes.
Trusa Bakura talks about what happens after Return of the
After
Jedi. What
Return of the
happens with
Jedi.
Luke at Return right afterwards. They
Yes.
didn't rest. There was another issue that was going along at a planet called Bakura.
Yes.
And there they go. All our heroes go over there. So yeah, a lot of the stuff that's now considered legends was they're very good stories. There's a couple in there that are like,
and you and I have talked about
yeah,
that
I've mentioned you one particular book
Yes.
that's like generally regarded as like the worst one.
Yeah, which one was that one, Rock? Just
The
in case-
Crystal Star.
The Crystal
Even
Star.
when I was reading it, I'm like, what is this? Even the villains, like, what is this? Like the characters they don't behave like this. And at that time, remember bulletin boards?
Yes.
At that
Oh
time,
yes,
there would
internet
be
voters
bulletin
boards.
and forums. And one of the questions, people put questions of, well, what is the worst book out there? And almost to a person, they all
we'll say
said
that one.
The Crystal Star.
When my daughter was born in 2004, there is a picture of me in the hospital reading Tatooine's Ghost.
Oh, yeah.
Which was another
Another
wonderful
Zahn. It's another
Yes,
Zahn book.
Yes, which
Yeah.
is another wonderful book. And so there's a picture of me. I was reading
Yeah, yeah.
that when my daughter was born. Yes. And, I think just as a universe, there are so many things. But, Rocky, let me ask you this. Do you feel that there is Star Wars fatigue?
Fatigue? For me, I don't think so.
Okay.
Not for me. I have other thoughts about, the direction that Disney has taken the
Okay.
Star Wars universe. But as far as fatigue, I do think that they released too much stuff too soon, or, they should have spread it out a little bit more.
Okay.
But for me, no. There was really no fatigue for me.
Okay. What about, and this is probably, you're going to come back for another episode to talk about comic book movies, but the people have compared the fatigue of comic book movies to the fatigue of Star Wars. But in your opinion, there is no fatigue when it comes to Star Wars.
Not for me. Not for
Okay.
me. I mean, they can re-release the Star Wars movies in the theaters. I'm gonna go watch it. I don't know about the most recent movies after Force Awakens. I probably will go because just as a general Star Wars fan, anytime to see Star Wars in the theater again would be fantastic. They've had re-releases. I know they did a few years ago. They had the Empire Strikes Back 40th anniversary release at the theaters.
Yes.
And my wife Nelda, we both went. They had a re-release. They had re-released Rogue One on IMAX.
Oh,
And
okay.
the only IMAX here is in Edinburgh.
In Edinburgh, yes.
And we went over there to go see Rogue One in the
At
IMAX.
AMC, right?
AMC on
Okay.
yeah. So I don't know. I wouldn't. For me, I wouldn't say it was a fatigue. I wish
So-
they would do things better, but as far as fatigue, no.
And you mentioned better. sometimes when I watch some of these movies, and before we go to the music break, and this is a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Rocky, honestly, for being
We
here.
need more
I love
time.
this. We are going to need more time. And so, and that's the thing, Rocky, is that every time I have a guest, well, in every show rather, but when I have a guest, the time just goes by so fast, and I know we're running a little bit late, so we're going to take that time also, running a little bit over our time. But before we go to the break, I do want to mention all the movies for those of you that are thinking about Star Wars. My niece. My niece has a son who's in elementary, and she started playing some of these Star Wars movies
Nice.
for him, and
Nice.
and he likes them so far.
Nice.
So let me give you a rundown of the release dates and the movies as they show up. Episode 4, New Hope, came out on May
Right on,
25th,
best movie.
1977. That's the best one.
That's my favorite
That's
movie.
the favorite one, right?
That's my favorite.
Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back,
Probably the best one.
May 21st, 1980. Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, May 25th, 1983. So New Hope and Return of the Jedi, according to this, came out on the same day, May 25th, 6 years apart. Then the re-releases, and as we mentioned, in 97. And then Episode 1, Phantom Menace, 1999. Rocky's making some signs over here.
Not a bad movie, but I can do without it.
Okay. Then you have Episode 2 in 2002, which is Attack of the Clones.
Not bad.
And
Not
then
bad.
Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
The best
Nin-
of those three.
May 19th, 2005. And then you have The Force Awakens in
It
2015.
was a good start.
And Episode 8, The Last Jedi.
Mm.
You're making some faces here.
Yeah.
2017.
What happened?
And then Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker in 2019.
Yikes.
And then you have some animated movies, and I think you've talked about this, 2008, excuse me,
Clone Wars.
Clone Wars.
Which started the Clone Wars series that was on Cartoon Network, actually.
Yes, and now it's been picked up by Disney Plus.
It's
Is
on
it?
Disney Plus.
It's on
They
Disney
did add a one more season
Okay.
to finish it, like several years after that. You need to start watching it.
Yeah, you and I have talked about that series, so yeah, you're right. I do got to watch that. And then 2 standalone movies thus far. Rogue One,
Good
which
movie.
came out in 2016, which
Kinda
is
like that one.
the ending is just an incredible.
That one I can watch
last
over and over
scene. Yes,
again,
that's a great movie. And then Solo, a Star Wars story in 2018.
Yeah.
And now there are 2 that are slated to come out.
Mhm.
One in 2026 was The Mandalorian.
Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Star Wars Starfighter in
Yeah.
2027, starring, I think,
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan
Gosling.
What are the Ryans? What are the
Ryan
Ryans?
Gosling. It's not
Ryan
Deadpool.
Gosling.
It's
No,
Ryan
Ryan
Gosling.
Gosling. Yes. And so
Well, we'll see if they get made. If that's they're always some movies have
That's
been
true.
canceled and all this other stuff. There was going to be a movie called Rogue Squadron,
oh yeah, that's right.
but that one got canceled for whatever reason. And
So I'll talk about this, Rocky. And you mentioned you were making some faces. I was going into some of these titles of the
sequel
movies, and the
trilogy.
sequels, and prequels. I never heard the term prequel until
Really?
Return of the. I mean,
you know what?
to
I think they made up
Return of
that
those movies.
word for
that?
episodes 1, 2, and 3.
You mentioned earlier also that you were in line for a movie at the Majestic Theater.
Yes, I remember being outside of it.
And I remember when The Phantom Menace came out in 99, that was the first time. Well, no, I'm lying. The first time I saw a line forming was Batman, the original. with
Batman
Michael
89?
Keaton,
Yeah, I remember.
I remember
yeah. The old
lines.
Cinema Mall.
lines,
I remember
lines
being
formed out.
out in line for that one also.
And the other line that I saw was when The Phantom Menace came out. So, yes.
Well, I
again-
remember being in line for the special editions at the Movies 10.
Oh,
The
really?
Movies 10
Okay,
was
yes,
the
Movies
movie
10.
theater.
Yeah,
So
here
I
in
remember
Bronzeville,
standing
right?
in line for the special editions.
Yes.
And you remember there was no reserved seating. It was
Oh, first come,
you
first
were in
serve.
line and you were ready to go to, especially if we had like us. It was like four or five
And
of
you
us.
all wanted to sit together.
Yeah, we had to go rush. Go rush to reserve our seats. Get the seats first and then the concessions.
I know. Even
Good old
even
days.
not too long ago, I remember going to watch one of the Marvel films. I think was it the Avengers with everybody came in the first one of that I didn't
First
even know that was
Avengers?
no, the one
Endgame,
Endgame.
Endgame?
No, the
Or-
one before that.
Ultron, with the next Avengers movies was Ultron or
Endgame was the last one of the Avengers series.
Infinity
right?
War.
Infinity
Infinity
War.
War.
That one. I remember that was the last movie that I ever watched where there was no reserved seating. And I went on a Sunday morning, Rocky.
Uh-huh.
Sunday morning, 9:30 show. super packed, people running to their seats.
Yeah.
So yes, I remember that. So this generation of viewers has it so much easier that they can select
You
seats.
don't know what they're missing, man.
Exactly,
You
right?
know, standing in line. You know who stands in line for tickets anymore?
Exactly.
You can buy it on the
Well,
on
you
the
can
app.
buy them,
Buy
exactly.
it on the app.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody. Again, thank you so much, Rocky, for being here, and thank you for listening. We're going to go to a music break. You're listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us back on to Library Talk and everything else. As I mentioned, when I have guests, the time just goes by so fast. And so we still have some time because we did start a little bit late. So thank you so much for being patient with us. And I want to thank also UTRGV Radio, Ariana and her team for setting us up every week. Thank you so much to everybody that is part of UTRGV Radio. If you are interested in this show and other shows that are so wonderfully produced by UTRGV, please tune in to the UTRGV Radio. And if you want to listen to past episodes of this show and some of the other ones, you can also go back to the YouTube channel for Vaquero Radio and listen to all the shows that are part of our university. So again, thank you so very much for being here. Thank you so much for allowing us to be part of your Thursday morning. So we talked about it, Rocky, before we went into the break, about the movies, and we talked a little bit about the books. And I think, as you mentioned, you have such wonderful memories of the books. And I want to ask you before we move on to the difference between canon and legends within Star Wars, and I think that's after the purchase by Disney. What is your favorite Star Wars novel?
Man.
Because I know you've read so many. I'm trying to
Well,
think.
I've read
also
all
about...
what's now kind of. Oh, by the way, I need to mention when the novels in the 90s were coming out, they weren't considered canon. George Lucas didn't consider it an actual
Oh,
timeline.
yes.
For him, it was the movies. It was the movies and the Clone Wars at that time.
Okay.
So just gotta put that clarification out
And
there.
that is so true because in Tales from the Bounty Hunters, for those of you that remember that one,
An anthology.
it's exactly the anthology. You have a story of that character IG-88.
Oh, man,
that
yeah.
ultimately becomes the Death
He
Star.
was gonna take over the
Exactly. So you're right. So you're right. You talk about canon.
Speaking of those anthologies, there's Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina.
Oh, which I think my favorite.
Every character in the cantina gets a story. That's a good book to
and
read.
Tales from Jabba's Palace also
Yes,
is another
yes.
one.
And then there's Tales from the New Republic.
Oh, I've never read that one.
Yeah, it's a little one that's a little bit later on when the novels are out. But I would recommend getting those out if you want to know about these characters.
Really?
Especially
Okay.
the Mos Eisley one and the
Yes.
Well, they're all good. They're all good.
Yes.
Anyway,
No, so we had talked about novels and canon and so
Canon and
forth,
legends.
and within Star Wars, Rocky, and you when we have a conversation, you tell me about all these different novels that you've read, and you've read the novels,
them.
but from the very beginning of Star Wars as a story, correct?
yes.
Which is which one? What's the very first
In the timeline,
in the timeline?
it's called Dawn of the Jedi.
Dawn of the
That
Jedi.
takes place thousands of years. What do they call it? ABY? BBY, before the Battle of Yavin. That's the center point
Oh,
of
okay,
the
that's
Star Wars
that's-
timeline. The Battle of Yavin is like year zero.
Which is from Star
A New
Wars:
Hope.
The New Hope.
That's from A New
That's
Hope.
right.
Yeah, so everything is, if you see ABY, 5 years ABY, that's 5 years after the Battle of Yavin.
Okay,
You
so-
know,
or
1,000
before.
years BBY, 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin.
And you see, so for a casual watcher of Star Wars that just watches the
I don't
movies
really
and
think that
maybe
matters to them if they're just watching the movies.
Okay, so who do you think the novels appeal to then?
The Star Wars fans.
Hardcore Star Wars fans.
I don't think you have to be a hardcore Star Wars
Okay.
fans. I know I've tried to get my kids into reading, but they're not readers like me. If you're just looking for good stories, science fiction story, you can't go wrong with some of with the Zahn books. There are other good Star Wars stories out there too. Just know that sometimes they reference events that happened before,
Yes.
and do you really need to know? Not really. But it would help for clarification. I'm not saying to start with Dawn of the Jedi and go all the way to Crucible, which is 30 years after the Battle of Yavin. If you're just a reader and you want to read good stories, Star Wars out there, do you have to be a fan? I don't think so.
I don't reread books, Rocky. That's one thing.
Right.
And you and I have talked about that.
Yeah.
There are only two books that I would reread, actually not have, but I would reread. One would be Shadows of the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is one of my favorite Stephen King novels, Needful Things.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only two that I would ever reread as
Okay.
books because my idea is
Yeah.
there's so many books,
Yeah.
right?
People have asked me, well, why don't you read this? Even Nelda's asked me, why don't you read this book? Oh, I'm not interested in that. It doesn't appeal to me. What appeals to you? Well, Star Wars. Tell her, hey, at least I'm reading books. It doesn't matter what you read as long as
As
you
long as
read
you're
what
reading
as
books,
long
right?
as you're reading what you enjoy.
So, okay, so we talked about this, and I just want
Yeah.
to clarify what this is for those of you that are listening. The Star Wars universe has two distinct timelines.
Yeah.
You have canon, which includes all the official books and stories that are considered part of the main Star Wars timeline.
That's Disney.
That's
Yeah, Disney canon means what is official, and so if when Disney bought it, everything that Disney has released, I think they in 2012 is when they bought it.
2012, correct.
Everything since then is canon. That's everything: novels, comics, games, anything else. Well, mostly everything. The shows that
Okay.
they've come out with, they're part of the overall Star Wars universe,
Okay, that's
with
canon.
very few exceptions.
Okay. And Legends is the older term for the previous universe of books, comics, and games that are no longer considered official canon, but are
Right.
still they contain valuable lore of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're looking at the research question, Rocky, and we go back to that, how have the stories, do you think, changed because of Disney's purchase of Lucasfilms?
Well, Legends had the main Star Wars characters through most of the novels. They were part of the history, so to speak, of the Star Wars galaxy after Return of the Jedi. You still had Han, you still had Leia, you still had Luke, you had Chewbacca, the droids are still involved, and all these other characters that Thrawn came up with actually became major characters. For those, I don't want to spoiler, but Luke ended up marrying one of the most popular characters that came out, Mara Jade.
Mara Jade, yes.
She wasn't a friend at first. Actually, she was she was called the Emperor's Hand.
Okay.
And he had several hands, and his order to her from the Emperor Palpatine was that she needed to kill Luke Skywalker. So she had to overcome that, and they did, and blah blah blah. They got married, and they had a son named Ben. Actually,
Okay.
so all those characters were involved in the development of the Star Wars history.
Now, this
There's
is
that.
pre-Disney.
Yes, this is what's now Legends, the unofficial canon, so to
Legends, okay.
speak. And what I've noticed, and we all saw with Force Awakens, those characters, for the most part, have been sidelined. And then in the books that I've read from the Disney canon, it usually focuses on one character, not all three, because they're all doing something. And Luke is off.
Yes,
off
I've seen that.
somewhere.
Han
Han
is
is-
Han and Lando and Chewbacca are in
Han
one
is
world,
doing-
and
yeah, he's doing something else, and Leia is wanting to become the next chancellor of the Star Wars galaxy and things like that, while bringing in other characters, but there's no cohesiveness, I guess, is
within
what.
the characters.
Yeah, from one novel to the next, and a
Okay.
lot of the characters are like one-offs. You'll see them in one novel or one set of trilogy, but then they're never mentioned again.
Okay.
As opposed to the Legends, where a bunch of characters are mentioned, like Zahn came up with a bunch of characters, and even other authors, as they wrote, their novels included some of the characters in there. So there was like a little thread from one novel to the other, and the stories kind of ran to each other, while these are like choppy, so to speak.
There's another science fiction writer that I followed within A.C. Crispin.
He has written some
He's-
Star Wars books
and
and some
so-
Star Trek also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so he was another author that
His
I
name is
kind of
familiar.
followed
Yeah,
him.
his name
Yes.
sounds familiar.
And so one of the novels that I really enjoyed was the Boba Fett trilogy with
Oh,
hard
that was a good one.
merchandise, and
That was a good one.
those are really
That
good.
was-
When
yeah,
you
that was a good one.
And something really weird is because in one of those books, they mention how Boba Fett survived.
Yes, it's the
in
first one
Return of the
right off
Jedi.
the bat. Yes,
And that's now part of the story, right? That he survived.
yes, as mentioned earlier, Disney's now, or whoever, Lucasfilm is now incorporating some Legends part of it into it, and of course Boba Fett, because the fans were calling for it.
Yes.
Survived the Sarlacc, so to
yes.
speak, a little differently than in the
In that book.
in the Bounty Hunter
Yeah.
trilogy, but he survived. Well, you see it in the Disney show, the Book of Boba Fett.
Yes.
You see what happens to him and stuff like that. So they kind of changed his characterization also, with that, which caused a lot of chaos
And
amongst
uproar.
the Star Wars fandom. But
Uproar.
some of us old school people, from what we know from what's now Legends.
So I want to go back to something that I talked about earlier you were making faces when I was talking about some of the movies, and I know you can't see them, but you were making faces.
Yeah, that's true.
And my question is, there are some cringe-worthy moments in some of the movies, the later movies, the latter
A
part
lot
of
of
the
them, actually,
series.
all of them. But yeah, the most current ones.
And I've always wondered why they did not take some of those wonderful stories from the books and incorporated that into some of the movies, because you have a wealth of wonderful science fiction writers
Yeah.
that could have undertaken some of these storylines.
From what I've read, they wanted to start with a clean slate, which I understand. They didn't want to be beholden because there's well over 100 books in Legends. Which I have a bookshelf and a half. I don't know
I've
if
seen
you've
it.
seen it. It's a bookshelf and a half of the books, 100, 120 books. And I think they realized they would be kind of tied down with original stories, which, well, okay. But there were some good stories there. But also the actors were also older. If they were going to try and make the Thrawn trilogy, Heir of the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command into a movie, well, that takes place 5 years after Return of the
Oh, you
Jedi.
can't really do that.
We're almost 30 years after Return of the Jedi. There's no way they could have done that. And I get moving it 30 years into the future, which matches the authors. Um, so I get that, but I think, in my opinion, is they made a mistake in just completely throwing away the what's now the legend. And they realized a mistake, and as we mentioned, they're bringing stuff back in. But they wanted to start, and I get starting from a clean slate.
So, with the purchase of Lucasfilm in 2012 by Disney, it was just, let's start new then.
Yeah, that's what they started. Force Awakens was a good start. I don't
It
really have an
was.
issue with Force Awakens.
I do.
The characterizations
I
of
do
Han
have-
and Leia being broken up, it's like, well,
I do have an issue.
I don't think that was gonna be them because they were very close. And that's what it is. It was the mischaracterizations over the 3 movies of Han, Luke, and Leia over the 3 movies.
And if you're listening to if you're listening to this episode of Star Wars, we are going to give some spoilers. So sorry about that, because
It's been a while. The movies have been out. So.
exactly, Rocky, you mentioned something. I was bothered, and it really took a toll on me. I'm not going to lie to you. So I get out of work, and my family-in-law is in town to go watch.
Oh yeah, I think you
I
told me
told you
this,
the
yeah.
story, to go watch
Force Awakens.
Force Awakens, and we're in line, and we're in line because this was still, again, a time where you didn't have reserved seating
Yeah,
just yet, so
yeah,
we
I
had to form a
remember
line,
that.
and that was fine. We're in line, so my family's already waiting for me there. I get out of work and I rush. I think the movie starts at 5:45.
Yeah.
5:45 show right before Christmas, so I rush. And it is just this cool vibe. Everybody's cool, everybody's happy, and so forth. So then, I told you this.
Yeah.
My
yeah.
sister-in-law sends a meme while we're in line about Han Solo, and I mean, if you again, Han Solo's
He's
death,
killed
right?
off. He's killed off. We'll just say it. It's been 10 years.
Exactly. I'm like, don't even show me this. Don't show me this. My brother-in-law, he made this face like, why did I just see this, right?
Yeah.
So we go watch the movie, and you've told me, and I didn't see it coming, that he was going to be, killed off in that movie. You felt it. I didn't. Rocky, that emotionally hurt me.
Yeah.
That
a lot of
death
people.
of Han Solo by his son,
Yeah.
it just emotionally did a number on me.
It did a lot of people. I want to say that there were audible gasps in the movie. I
There-
could see it coming. You're still not prepared for it.
I didn't
You
see
know,
it coming.
I
Rocky.
kind of figured it might happen because
I didn't see it
if you
coming.
going back to Return of the Jedi, Harrison Ford, who played Han Solo, had wanted Han Solo killed off.
I think Empire Strikes Back, right, where he was going to be frozen, and they didn't know whether they were going to bring him back or not.
Yeah, that's right. He didn't want to come back. He wanted
Exactly.
to move on, and so they kind of work around. But Harrison Ford had wanted his character to be killed off.
Rocky, I was emotionally distressed.
A lot of people were.
Yeah, and then
A
you're
lot of
right. That
people were.
gasp.
Yeah, a
right.
lot
And
of
the movie
people
theater
were.
was packed, and so there was this collective like. So we get out of the movie. I'm not lying to you, and I've told you this story before. We went to get tacos. Rocky, I couldn't even focus. Honestly, I was just so out of it,
Yeah,
knowing
I
that
get it,
Han
I
Solo
get it.
had been killed.
You know
It
what?
just messed me
maybe
up.
I wasn't as bad as you, but I remember probably talking about with my son Ryan because he would have felt it too. I think it was just as shocked as anybody.
Yes.
Anybody, you know.
I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah,
You know,
I
you've
don't
talked
think
about
anybody
that.
was. I mean,
And yeah, man, I don't know if I can even see that scene or watch that scene rather
you know
when
what?
I watch
Speaking of
that.
that scene, I was like, oh man, it still
It
gets
still
you, man. It
gets you.
still gets you right in the heart, you know.
Right. So we're gonna go to a music break, and again, we are going a little bit over our time because we did start a little bit late. And I want to thank Rocky for being in the studio, and for all of you to, you know, from was Star Wars fan or not, thank you so much for supporting the show, and I truly, truly appreciate you allowing us to be part of your Thursday mornings. We're gonna go to a music break, then we'll come back and close off. And honestly, thank you. It's been such a wonderful Thursday. Thank you so much, everybody, again for joining us for Library Talk and everything else. Again, your host DJ JC, and I have in the studios Mr. Rocky Rocha, and we're getting ready to finish up the conversation. And it's been such a wonderful, wonderful episode, as are all of the episodes where I have guests, and the other ones where I'm solo. But I really enjoy having guests come in, especially with their friends, and we get to talk about all these different topics that are interests to me and to the community. And that's what this show is about. We look at every topic, we look at every subject area, but with a library and research component behind it. So, Rocky, before we kind of close off the show here, if somebody is listening that wants to get started with the novels, maybe they've already watched the movies and they've enjoyed the movies, maybe they've liked some movies more than others, because you and I have also talked about the order in which you should watch the movies. Yeah. But what is a book that you would recommend, or a series that you would recommend for somebody, the casual reader that wants to get into the novels?
Well, I'm going to have to go with the Legends timeline.
Okay.
That's I think the story is a little bit better. Well, not a little, but a lot better there. And you got to start right from the beginning with the Thrawn trilogy, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and Last Command. And there you can go forward and back.
There was a Thrawn book that came out as a standalone, right? Not too long ago?
Yeah, but I think that was canon.
Oh, okay, that's
But it was
canon
also
now.
there was also a Thrawn trilogy in the canon.
Oh,
Also
okay.
by Timothy Zahn.
Oh,
'cause
Timothy
he
Zahn.
knows the character best.
Oh, okay. So that's the one you would recommend. And again, there's 3 books in
From
that
the
series.
Legends,
From
yeah.
the Legends. All right. I would recommend Shadows of the Empire. That
I
is
would
one
too.
of my favorite books.
There's a lot of good novels.
There are a lot of really good novels.
There's a novel set in the Knights of the Old Republic era, the Clone Wars era. There are a lot of good ones. There's one. I meant to have the title of Mace Windu, Shatterpoint.
Oh, yes, Shadowpoint.
That
That's right.
one.
Yeah.
That one. It's kind of hard to understand. I had to read that one twice.
Okay, Rocky, so I want to ask you one last thing here. If, again, a casual reader, how do they know whether it is canon or part of the Legends? If they're looking at
The Legends book will
bookstore.
have a banner on the covers now in gold with
Oh,
black
okay.
with black letters, and it says Legends.
Okay.
Now, just to clarify again, the Legends novels are not official canon anymore. If you want to go canon, then
Anything without that.
yeah.
Now, you had a series at your house the other day, Bloodlines, I believe? Or
Bloodlines, yeah, that's a canon novel. It was
That's a
about
canon
Princess Leia.
Okay. All right. Everyone, thank you so very much for making us part of your Thursdays. Honestly, we're here every Thursday morning at 10. I enjoyed this conversation so much. And thank you, Rocky. Honestly, I want you to come back to talk about something
Definitely.
else next time.
Definitely. Or we can continue Star Wars.
We can continue with Star Wars. It's such a broad topic. I remember when the Phantom Menace was coming out, so many documentaries about the making
Yeah,
of
the
it and
making.
all that. And I remember
Yeah, I remember
seeing
that.
in this documentary, I remember seeing there was a snippet where they had lines forming in Mexico City, in Japan, and there's this thing about Star Wars that just excites us. And you're right. Any new movie that comes out with Star Wars, we're probably gonna go end up
It
watching
has a
it.
built-in audience. It'll be an instant hit.
Right?
Regardless.
Yes, you do. Thank you so very much, everybody. You've been listening to Library Talk and everything else.
Just one more thing. This
Yes,
is,
by
this
all
is for
means.
Allison. My favorite color is blue.
And thank you so much for family and friends that are listening. You are what make the show possible, and your continued support just continues to motivate us to put this show out for you. So to every listener, if you are a first-time listener and you liked what you heard, again, please join us every Thursday morning. If you are new to the show, we really appreciate you as well. All right? You've been listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Until next week, have a great one. Bye.